Hi folks, I hope you're all doing really well today. Now, first off, apologies for the delay in getting a new feature live on FMDataLab. I recently bought a house, and as anyone who's been through that ordeal knows, it's never a straightforward process. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to dedicate as much time to FMDataLab as I would have liked over the past few months. Now, before we jump into the new feature, I just want to talk briefly about FMDataLab and the upcoming release of FM26. Now, it is most likely that FM26 exports won't work perfectly straight out of the box, the tools on FMDataLab, especially the row scores tools because of the new in and out of possession rules. It'll take some time to adapt FMDataLab across the board for FM26 while ensuring FM24 exports continue to work as expected. For FM26 in FMDataLab, I do have a long list of tasks, long enough to rival Rory Delap's long throws, so this won't be a quick couple of hours to fix, more like a few weeks, maybe a month, possibly two, depending on how FM26 exports are structured and how similar they are to FM24. Now, if exports are missing entirely, well, that'll be a challenge for another day. Right, let's get into the new feature then. This is one I've wanted to work on ever since I first created the league multipliers for the Moneyball tool. One of the main challenges with the existing setup is that when setting a league multiplier manually, the number often feels arbitrary. It isn't always based on any concrete data analysis, more on intuition, assumptions, or the ever reliable vibes approach. So to resolve that, I've created a new feature that derives league multiplier values by comparing the reputation of your league against another. It assesses the comparative strength between the two reputation values and converts that into a realistic multiplier grounded in data. This means you no longer have to guess or estimate a league's multiplier. Instead, you can rely on data-driven calculations based on reputation differences across leagues, giving you, hopefully, a more accurate and confident understanding of how one league compares to another. So the multipliers that get derived from league reputation are not some magic numbers I pulled out of a hat. They're grounded in observable in-game behaviour from multiple simulations in-game. I ran a set of controlled Football Manager simulations that mirror what actually happens when players move between leagues. These runs produce what I call the mouthful that it is, the League Reputation Multiplier Matrix. This was created by looking at how top performers from one league fared after moving to a stronger league with better reputation, and then repeating that process all the way up the reputation ladder. Then use that data to scale multiplier values across a full reputation range. Now, I won't bore you with every tiny detail here. That is included in the October 2025 changelog and the Moneyball tutorial if you want the more in-depth walkthrough of the process. But I will cover the basics at the end of the video for those interested. Now, it is worth saying that it's not perfect. Some leagues might appear slightly stronger or weaker than the multiplier may suggest. And of course, this is all grounded on player performance between leagues, but player performance isn't just about reputation either. There's tactics, team cohesion, role fit, training quality, etc, etc. So while these multipliers based on league reputation give you a good sense of how hard a league jump might be, they're still averages that are based on many players over many seasons. You'll always have one player who moves up a few tiers and smashes it, and another who flops completely. So yeah, this matrix isn't gospel. It's really just a useful benchmark. Think of it as saying, on average, here's what happens when a player moves from League A to League B, not this is exactly what will happen. Right, with that covered, let's take a look at how you can use the new League Reputation feature in the Moneyball tool to get a fairer picture of how your transfer targets might actually fare in your league. First up, before anything else, you'll need to set your league's reputation value. Think of this as your baseline, the foundation for how every other league's reputation will be compared, so we can figure out the correct league multiplier for a selected league. To assign a reputation value to your own league, you will upload a Moneyball file to the Moneyball tool as always. Then when it loads, just click on the League Multipliers button above the table to open up the Add League Multipliers dialog. You'll see a button above the list called Add Your League Reputation. Click that. This will open up a dialog window where you can define your league's reputation in one of two ways. The first option is to select a star rating that reflects your league's reputation. The second option is to specify a numeric reputation value. That way, if you know the exact reputation value, you can enter it here directly for more precision. So first, to figure out your league's star rating, you'll need to pop over to Football Manager itself. So once in Football Manager, click on the globe icon in the top right corner. Once the panel opens, switch to the World tab along the top. On the left hand side under the General section, you'll see an option called Rankings. Click that. Now when the page loads, hover over the Competitions tab and select Leagues. I know this is a bit of a journey to get there. There might be a quicker way, but this is just how I typically do it. On this page, you'll see a full list of leagues from across the world, all neatly arranged by reputation. I would avoid trying to sort any of these columns here, as you'll need these later and it's better. I think this is the actual accurate reputation sort. Each league has a star rating displayed in the reputation column. This list also helps you see where your league sits compared to others of the same star rating. Now this becomes really handy in the next step, when we start defining whether your league belongs in the low, mid or high band for its rating. For example, maybe you have a 3-star league that sits in the lower third of all 3-star leagues, rather than just one that's right on the edge of a 4-star quality. If you're struggling to find your league in this giant list, it can help to open up your league's main screen first, find your league star rating, then when you're on the league list, you can scroll past the higher tier leagues until you hit your league's reputation range. Once you spot it, you can easily note down a star rating and where it roughly falls within that star rating range. Now back over to FMDataLab. Let's look at the star rating selector on the left. If you select the 5-star rating, that will always represent a reputation value of 200, since that's the maximum possible reputation value in Football Manager for a domestic league. If you were to drop down just 1 point to 199, that actually becomes a 4.5-star rating in-game. Now that 4.5-star rating is a bit of an odd one because in-game, typically it sits in a narrow band between 180 and 185. That's not to say that domestic leagues can't go higher than that, but realistically 180 to 185 is the range for a 4.5-star league. Now, in actual fact it is 180 to 199, but I haven't personally seen a reputation over 185 for a domestic league. I could be wrong. Now once you've chosen your star rating, you can fine tune it further by using the tabs just below it. As I mentioned before, there's low, mid or high. Now these tabs let you decide where exactly within that star rating your league should sit. For example, a mid-tier 3-star league might not be quite as competitive as a high 3-star league, even though they share the same visual rating. Now each of these tabs will also show you the actual reputation range tied to that position, so you'll always know what level of strength you're assigning. Whenever you do choose a star rating, the numeric reputation field to the right also updates automatically to keep everything in sync. Now below the star rating section, you'll also find a reputation ranges table showing you how each star rating maps to its reputation band. So as I mentioned earlier, setting your league's reputation doesn't just rely on setting a star rating option. You can also enter the exact reputation value directly using the reputation input field. Now the catch here is that you'll need to have the in-game editor purchased, downloaded and enabled in your save. Now this input is also quite handy for making small tweaks to the reputation figure. When you select the star rating and choose low, mid or high, the system picks the middle point of that range automatically. So if your league happens to be right at the top end of a particular star rating, you might want to nudge that number slightly higher to reflect that extra edge and quality. Now when you have the in-game editor active, you can grab your league's exact reputation value and enter it straight into the reputation number field. Now you can also use the pre-game editor, but just be aware that it's truly only accurate at the start of a new save. After that, reputation values can shift season to season as leagues rise or fall in standing. So it's more of a one-time reference point than a long-term measure. And on that point, it's better to do this season by season as well, updating your reputation, updating all the other leagues' reputation at the same time, just to keep everything in sync. So to find your league's reputation value in the in-game editor, here's what you need to do. Head to your league's main screen in Football Manager. Click the in-game editor icon in the top right corner and select the Edit Competition Details option, which will open a window, and inside that, you'll see the reputation number for your league listed clearly in the reputation field. Now once you've got that figure, just enter it into the reputation input box in FMDataLab. For this input field, you can enter any whole number between 1 and 200. And when you do, it'll automatically synchronize with the star rating system so that both visual star rating and the numeric reputation system stay in sync. So once you've entered your league's reputation via either method, you can save it in one of two ways, either save or save and update. Once you choose save and update, the system won't just store your league's reputation value, it'll also refresh and recalculate all existing league multipliers that already have a reputation value assigned. This keeps everything consistent and ensures that your new league reputation is reflected properly across every connected league. Leagues without any defined reputation value won't be affected, they'll stay exactly as they are. If you just select save, that's fine too, but it'll simply just record your league's reputation value without recalculating anything else. But just a fair warning, if you do go down that route, your existing multipliers with reputation values will drift slightly out of sync with your new reputation figure, so keep that in mind before clicking that button. So next up, it's time to assign reputation values to other leagues. Now there are two ways to go about this. One's a bit of a manual slog and the other's far more interesting and does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Naturally, I'll start with the fun one for viewer retention and all that. For the fun part, setting the reputation values for other leagues the easy way. This method is far cleaner, quicker, and a lot more efficient than doing it manually. Plus, it will save your wrist from what I can only describe as click fatigue, so that's a win. With this option, you can set multiple leagues' reputations at once. The system will analyse each league's reputation in relation to your own and automatically calculate the corresponding multiplier values for each league. So for this, you'll need to jump back into Football Manager. You'll want to head back to that screen with the World League list sorted by reputation, the one we looked at earlier. So before you do anything here, it's usually quite a good idea to scroll to the bottom of this list and then back to the top. That just makes sure every league has actually gotten loaded, because I found that sometimes that whenever you go to export this list, which you will need to do, it sometimes truncates it a little bit, so it's worth doing that first. It's not always going to be a perfect solution for this, but I found that's usually worked for me. I usually forget to do it the first time, so I have to go back and do it again. For this step, you'll need to click the league at the top of the list and make sure it's highlighted. Then, depending on your setup, if you're on Windows, you press Ctrl and A to select all leagues in the list, or if you're on Mac, you can press Command and A to do the same. You can also just click and I think drag the whole way down, which might also be a good option to make sure that any leagues don't get truncated in the export. Next up, you want to bring up the print dialog. So if you're on Windows, you can press Ctrl and P, or Mac, it's Command and P. You can also click the FM logo at the top of the screen, and then you can select the option to print. So once the print dialog is open, just choose the web page as your print option. Then you'll be prompted to give your file a name and location, so do that. Before you actually upload this to FMDataLab, it is worth double checking that the export hasn't truncated any leagues. To do this, open up the HTML file. It's usually best to do it in a browser. Scroll to the bottom and then compare it if that league is actually at the bottom of the league list in Football Manager. If it's not, you'll probably have to re-export again until you get it right. Now unfortunately, the exported HTML file does not include the star ratings figure that you see in game. Yeah, I know, it would have made life a lot easier for you and I. So you'll need to assign these star ratings manually inside FMDataLab once you upload the file. So once you're back in FMDataLab, you want to head back to the Add League Multipliers dialog. You'll see a new button named Upload Reputation List. So click on that, and that will open up an upload window where you can drag and drop your file, or you can just select it directly by clicking on the upload area and selecting the file. So this will be quite a quick upload, so after it finishes, you'll start assigning star ratings to each league. So this step is all about assigning which leagues fall into which star ratings. So that's why it's quite important that you haven't sorted that list in any other way other than by reputation. So you'll be selecting league reputations, and it'll be a range from 5 stars going all the way down in half-star steps to half a star at the end. Now there might be times when a certain star level doesn't actually exist in your data set. For example, I don't believe any domestic league ever hits the full 5 stars, that's the 200 reputation. In that case, just click the No 5-Star Reputation Leagues button in the top right. That will skip to the next star rating, which is 4.5 stars. Then sometimes you'll also find when there's only one league with a particular star rating. For example, when the game begins, the English Premier Division is the only league with 4.5 star reputation. When that happens, the list will show a single league badge next to that league. That's just confirming that there's only one league in that category. In those cases, just press the next button in the bottom right to move on to the next step. When you're defining which leagues fall into which reputation tiers, FMDataLab starts by automatically selecting the first league in the list as the highest ranked league for that star tier. Your job is to then choose which one represents the lowest ranked league in that star rating by clicking on it manually. Once you've chosen the lowest ranked league, FMDataLab will mark the boundaries of that tier, connecting all the leagues in between. So you'll see which leagues are highlighted, and those that are highlighted are the ones that fall in that tier. Now you'll see 2 helpful badges appear in this list. There's the highest ranked badge, which will be beside the strongest league, and the lowest ranked badge, which would decide the weakest one. These badges make it clear how each reputation tier is defined. All the other leagues in between will also be highlighted. Now when you're happy with your selections, just click the next button to apply them and move on to the next star rating. FMDataLab will save your choices and carry you through the rest of these tiers in order. So once you've gone through all of them and confirmed all of your selections, you move on to the final stage. This is the review stage. Think of this as the last pit stop before logging everything in. Here you'll get a full overview of every league you've selected. You'll see each league's proposed reputation value, its star rating, its calculated multiplier, and if it already had existing values, you'll see those side by side with the new ones. Each league gets its own reputation value based on the selections you made earlier. The top league within each star tier will always have the highest reputation available for that level. For example, if you're working within the 3-star tier, those leagues' reputations fall between 120 and 139. The strongest league will have 139 and the weakest one will have 120, with everything in between scaled proportionally based on the ranking and just how many teams fall into that tier. So some leagues might have the exact same reputation value, especially if that star tier has more than 19 leagues in this instance. Once those reputation values are in place, the system will automatically convert them into multiplier values by comparing each league's reputation against your own league's reputation. Behind the scenes, the system references the internal reputation matrix I mentioned earlier, where every reputation value corresponds to a relative multiplier. This allows the system to calculate an accurate strength difference between your league and every other league in your dataset. Now at this point you can actually scroll through this list to make sure everything lines up with your expectations. If something doesn't look right, you can actually tweak it later. So I'd actually like it so you could actually tweak it here, but that's maybe a job for me for another day. Now if you want to exclude a particular league from the final update, you can just untick its checkbox before saving. That league will be skipped during the save process, meaning no changes will be applied to it. At this point you may also want to deselect your own league from the list, as your league is the baseline. Essentially in terms of multipliers it should be 1, so there isn't really any need to save it. Once you're happy and confident with your setup, click Save Configuration to finalize your changes. When you save all these changes, the system will overwrite any existing league configurations that overlap with your current selections, replacing them with the new confirmed values. Now, one thing worth noting here, that this process also updates all related stat group multipliers. So if you had a league that already had some stat group multipliers that differ from the base league multiplier, those will actually be realigned to match the updated value. If you've been experimenting with different group multipliers, just be aware that saving here will bring everything back into sync. So if you don't want to update the stat group multipliers, it may be worth unchecking this league and then noting down what the reputation value and the league multiplier is, and then you can update it manually, which I'll get to in a moment. Now let's go on to the boring manual method. The manual method works pretty much the same way as when you set the reputation for your own league. Now to do this, open up the Add League Multipliers dialog, then select the league you want to configure. Once it's highlighted, click the Add League Reputation button next to the multiplier input. That'll open up a dedicated dialog box, very similar to the one you used earlier when setting your own league's reputation. There are a couple of subtle differences here though. Just below the reputation input, you'll see your own league's reputation listed as a reference point. This gives you a clear idea of where your selected league sits in relation to your own. To the right of the input, there's an indicator showing the derived multiplier value for the current reputation value entered, which lets you instantly see how much stronger or weaker that league is compared to yours. And to make things even clearer on how reputation affects multipliers and then those multipliers affect stats, I've included some practical examples showing how some key stats would change if a player from that league then moved to yours. Once you set the reputation value you want for the selected league, hit save. The system automatically recalculates the league multiplier for the league based on your own league's reputation value. Now it's not the most exciting process, especially compared to the other option, sure, but this may be required for some of those really obscure leagues that might pop up in your dataset that are not included in the global league list, because I think it's only 500 and there's definitely more than 500 leagues in the game. Now it is worth noting, once you do this, it's good to save all these changes so it affects all your Moneyball data. Now all this data is saved into what's known as local storage, so it's stored in your browser, but it won't actually update all your Moneyball data until you click that save button. So if you were to close this dialog window, you'll actually not necessarily lose your changes, but you'll need to re-upload again to actually get those changes persisted. So to wrap everything up, as I mentioned earlier, I'll cover the basics on how the data was derived to determine multipliers by league reputation. So the first step was to find the top performers from the lowest playable reputation league that has 34 reputation. And to do that, I determined a pretty standard 4-2-3-1 formation. Then, for each position within that formation, I identified the top performing players across 5 simulations of that league. To achieve this, I created a computed statistic for each position, combining a select of weighted key 90 statistics relevant to each role. So once each season had finished, I exported the Moneyball data, added possession adjusted stats to make those comparisons fair, then merged all 5 seasons together. Each player's result for every computed stat was converted into a percentile value, comparing how they performed relative to their peers in the same position and league, which was then aggregated to determine which players consistently ranked among the top performers for their respective roles. So I end up with basically the best 11 for a 4-2-3-1 in that league. So the next step was to move those top performers into a league with slightly higher reputation. So I kept the same tactic and formation, then for each player compared how they fared moving to a higher reputation league by comparing their statistic changes within their computed stat, then finding on average how each player performed to help determine a multiplier. So my first simulation for players from a league with 34 reputation, they moved to a league with 53 reputation. Now players on average performed 17% worse. Now some players performed way worse than that and some players actually did better. Ultimately, what this comes out to is a multiplier of 0.83 between those leagues. And as I said at the beginning, this is based on an average. So again, you might have some players that really do exceed that multiplier and other players who go way worse. This multiplier reference is then smoothly distributed across each intermediate reputation value between those 2 leagues. This distribution is carefully calibrated to ensure a gradual natural progression rather than a strictly linear interpolation. So then I repeated this whole process again, moving the best players from the 54 reputation league to another slightly higher reputation of 60. The multiplier from that jump came out at 0.92. I did this over and over again, climbing up the league ladder 1 reputation step at a time, which let me build out a complete range of multipliers that connect the very bottom reputation to the very top, all the way up to the English Premier Division, which is the highest ranked league in game with 185 reputation. The final stage involved populating the comprehensive league reputation multiplier matrix with all the derived multipliers from previous simulations. This process also addresses the reputation values that lie above or below the range of playable leagues by calculating the average multiplier difference across all reputations and using this as an estimate to fill in the gaps. So once all reputation values between 1 and 200 have a relative multiplier assigned, the matrix is then normalized so that the relative multipliers commence at 1, ensuring consistency and comparability across the entire range of league reputations. Hopefully that makes some sense. It did take me quite a long time to do all the simulations and figure out how to turn those comparisons into multipliers. Hopefully now it's a little bit more grounded in data and not just guesswork. So that's it, you've officially survived the league reputation setup, so hopefully not too painful. If you found this useful or at least mildly helpful, be sure to give the video a like and subscribe if you fancy seeing more of this kind of stuff in FM26. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.